Hey money nerds, if you feel like you make decent money but you are constantly financially behind, this episode is going to be for you. I hear this a lot, where a lot of people put this pressure on themselves to be at a certain set point by the time they're 30 or 40 or even 25. And it is really easy to see where this comes from. We see a lot of articles and Instagram and social media content where it really personifies this almost fake lifestyle where it seems like everybody is doing really well financially except for you. So what happens is we see this, we start to compare ourselves, and then we go down this big, huge spiral where we feel like we aren't living up to our full potential. Now that could be true in some ways, but what I do want to remind you of is social media is a lie. We all know this. We know that people are just sharing their highlight reels instead of the full picture about what's going on behind the scenes and their stressors and what keeps them up at night. So we're not really getting a full picture of the actual way we feel. But when we don't realize that, or we fail to remember that, it can feel like everybody is doing everything ahead of you and you're just like barely scrimping by. You have friends that are taking vacations that are amazing and look so much fun. You've got friends that maybe are putting their kids in private school and you can't afford that. Or maybe they just bought a brand new home or they're building their dream home and you are still in your starter home. It's easy to feel behind, but at the end of the day, you have to remind yourself that we are all on our own pathway. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut through the noise. We're going to put on our rose-colored goggles for a minute, and we are just going to focus on our own lives. So here's where I want you to start to understand when this stuff comes up, what exactly to do. So first and foremost, anytime this stuff comes up for me where I feel like I'm behind, I have to pause and ask myself, one, where is this coming from? Where does this feeling of always being behind actually stem from? Is it from social media? Is it from my friends? Is it from my family? Where did this trigger come from? Once we understand that trigger, we can start to put some healthy parameters and boundaries around that so that we're not constantly triggered and always feeling like our life sucks. Once we have that in place, the second thing I personally like to do is I like to really reintroduce gratitude practices in my life. If I have ever noticed where I'm feeling behind or like I'm not really doing enough or living up to my full potential or my life is kind of crappy, it's usually a good indicator that I have slacked on my gratitude practices and I need to refocus on gratitude, which leads to contentment. The way that I personally like to express this is I like to go for gratitude walks. So I'll walk around my neighborhood a few times around the block and I will very actively not be on my phone and just be keyed into the world around me. I will say 3 things that I'm truly grateful for, and I have to be specific. I can't just be like my partner or my kid or my job. I have to be very, very specific about what exactly I'm grateful for, and that tends to help and really alleviate some of the feelings of my life isn't enough to I have plenty and I have more than enough. It's a good shift to make. Okay, once we have the right headspace, then we can start diving into the numbers to see if you are actually financially behind. You probably are not, but that doesn't mean there isn't ways to improve your finances a little bit so that you feel better about this. One of the things that I like to do is I like to track my net worth. Your net worth, if you've never done this before, is a pretty easy calculation. You start with everything that you own, and then you list out everything that you owe. So your assets and your liabilities. And when you have these written out, what it will tell you is when you take your assets, you subtract out your liabilities, it's going to give you a number. And that number is your net worth. Your net worth tells you a good indicator of how you're actually doing financially. It's also nice to just see it on one piece of paper because it gives you ideas of how you can start to shift things around. So often we really focus so much on the asset side of like, how do I invest more? How do I accumulate more assets and wealth, when really the greatest thing you can do in some cases is look at the side of the liabilities. How do you reduce your liabilities so that your overall net worth increases? And so what I like to remind people of is this number should be tracked at least every 6 to 12 months. I like to do mine once a year. I find anything above that, it's helpful, but the market fluctuates so much that when I'm looking at the value of my stocks, every 6 months is really not that exciting to me. So I like to look at the 1 year snapshot. It really helps me understand what my starting point is when it comes to my finances. So after we set our net worth, then we're gonna look at our bigger picture goals. So when you start to understand what your bigger picture goals are, it's easier for you to feel less financially behind because you're kind of running your own race. You're not trying to compare yourself to your brother or your cousin or your best friend or some stranger on the internet. You're really focusing on what your pathway is, your own race. So when we're looking at our goals, I like to start with our 5-year goals and then work backwards from there. I find that anything above 5 years can be a little bit hard to plan for and to really fathom for because life changes a lot in 5 years, let alone 10 years. And so start with your 5-year vision. What is that vision you have for your life? What time do you wake up? What do you do first thing in the morning? How do you feel when you go to work? Do you have a family? Do you not? Start to really paint this picture very clearly for you of where you want to be in 5 years. And then work backwards. Start to set those goals. How do you start to support your 5-year goal and make that into actionable 1-year goals or quarterly goals, or even a plan that you can start to implement immediately? Here's what I mean by that. Let's say that you have a goal of having a new home and you need a $50,000 house payment, down payment for the home. What we can do is we can take $50,000, we can divide that by 5 years, and that's going to give us $10,000 per year that we need to save. We need to save $833 per month in order to accomplish this house down payment goal. When we have that, then we can start to implement that. So let's say you're paid every 2 weeks. We would need to automate from your paychecks and from your income $416.50 every single paycheck to go automatically into a savings account. Now, this is what we call a money system, where your money is working for you towards the goals that you want to accomplish. It's really easy to set up, but it's sometimes very discouraging because when you start to put all of your goals on paper, you have to pick and choose what's most important. And that can feel a little bit overwhelming and sort of disappointing, and can also trigger feelings of being financially behind. But what you have to remind yourself of is, again, we are running our own race. And so what we're doing here is we're starting to figure out what's important to us. How do we funnel money systematically away so that it's starting to build up for us? And how do we continue with our investments and living our life on a normal terms that we feel good about? That's how you're going to start to feel like you're a little bit less behind. The other thing I like to do when I am coaching somebody or I'm working through this myself, when somebody feels like they're behind, I like to go into this whole thought work model that I learned from Brooke Castillo from the Life Coach School. And what this looks like is it's a way of self-coaching yourself to understand that things are not always what they seem. Just because we say something does not mean that's reality, or just because we feel something. So the thought work model, if you're new to this, is your circumstances lead to your thoughts lead to your feelings, and your feelings lead to your actions lead to your results. So if we are not getting the result that we want, it's usually something in that framework that we need to adjust. Most cases, it's our thoughts. Our thoughts are what's leading to the result that we're getting. So if we shift that thought, we start to get better results and feel better about our progress. So your circumstances are things that you can't necessarily control. That's your starting point. Maybe your net worth currently is a negative net worth. Maybe you have negative $10,000. That is a circumstance, but the thought that we say about that negative $10,000, that's what matters. Because if we feel like, oh my gosh, that's negative $10,000, I'm an idiot, I suck, that's going to lead to this feeling of unworthiness or disappointment in ourselves or shame. And that feeling is going to lead to actions that are not really congruent with, I'm positive, I'm motivated, I'm excited about my finances. It's probably going to be things like, I'm going to put my head in the sand, I'm going to ignore it, I'm not going to talk about my money ever, and I'm going to feel like crap all the time. So if that's the case, if those are the actions that we're taking is maybe ignoring or ignorance, then the results that we're going to get are not going to be positive. Results are not going to be in line with the actions that we're taking from somebody who feels like, I really have my stuff together with money. And if at the end of the day you feel like you are making decent money, but you still are financially behind, this is usually an indicator that you need to reduce your lifestyle and increase your contributions to your 401k or your investing, your savings accounts, and you need to get back on a budget so that you can start to feel good and in control with your progress. At the end of the day, everybody is going to be at different stages in their finances. Some people make more than us, some people make less than us, some people make the same, but they're not even doing the right things with money. Maybe they're spending and they have so much debt. And when we look at this highlight reel, it's easy to want to compare ourselves and say, well, they have that, so why can't I? But when you pare back and you see the reality, a lot of times when you see it, you would not want to trade people places. When you see how much debt they have, or you see how much stress they have, or how their relationship is crap, or the reason they are spending is because they have a lot of mental health issues, that isn't necessarily somebody you want to trade places with. So remind yourself that everyone is doing their own thing, but you have to focus on you. If you feel behind, it's because you haven't identified what you should be doing, what your specific goals are. When you are in line with your goals and you have a good idea of what you're working towards, and you can actually track your progress and manage it, you're not going to feel like you're always behind financially. Okay, I hope this episode was helpful for you. This is something I have to go back to often for myself too. We all deal with comparison syndrome. We all feel a little bit behind sometimes. And I hope that this helps you at least feel back on track and a little bit more in control of your finances. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next week for another episode of the Money Nerds podcast. Bye.